Ready to do some more skiing?
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Yeah. Sent you an email. Got that, okay. Perfect. So just a couple figures, I think. 20 days. Yeah. Yeah, I'll run it from here when you're there. Okay, sounds good. Any one first. There's the owner, there's Dale. Oh, really? Street closure. About an hour ago.
I don't see him yet.
Yeah.
We got like 3 more minutes.
I guess it's perfect time.
We did a.
Yeah, sorry. I heard you were, you're in the legislature, so you're.
Absolutely. You got.
I gotta just speak about that one there. There's Tuesday. Yeah. We get a recording.
Yeah, let's shoot me a start.
That would be a play. Yeah. Yeah, then we let's see. Natural press rallies. Featured as well. Share it now. This, right in. Is that the next one? That's what I hear. In the right direction.
Okay, you have everybody on your committee plus Dale.
One.
Yeah, a minute or so. Just one. I'll take a second. Just to make sure. So much.
Hey, I heard a rumor Boise had its first snow.
Yes, it did.
No, it didn't. That wasn't snow.
It snowed for about 30 minutes, then turned back to rain.
That was not snow.
I drove through Mountain Home, Jeff, and it was snow, sleet, and freezing rain, so.
Yeah, I heard there's like 25 wrecks on the freeway out toward Nampa though.
Yeah, well, the cold road and then that.
Yeah.
Should we go?
Yes, I think it is time, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Idaho Water Resource Board Water Storage Projects Committee. I'm Chairman Brian Olmstead, and I want to welcome those who are in the audience and those on Zoom. And first order of business will be introduction and attendance. I'm going to let Brian Patton take care of that.
Okay, you have a full committee this afternoon. You have Brian Olmstead, the chair. You have Jeff Raybould, Joanne Cole-Hansen, Mark Gibbs, Al Barker, and you have Dale Van Stone, who's member of the water board, but not on the storage committee, all in attendance. And looks like Pat McMahon is also joining us.
Pat, we want to see your scars.
Not today, Al.
You look a lot better after about 2 years.
Yeah, maybe by the third meeting I'll do it.
Okay, first order of business then is the Anderson Ranch Dam raise, new storage allocation discussion, but we're going to start with Cynthia Bridge Clark is going to lead off.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Chairman Olmstead and committee members and board members. Thank you all for joining us. So the topic, as you mentioned, for today's meeting is the Anderson Ranch Dam raise, and specifically the start of a discussion about options and development of a plan for allocation of the anticipated new storage space. The project, as you all know, is intended to increase the Anderson Ranch Dam reservoir water surface elevation by 6 feet. And that's expected to provide an additional 29,000 acre feet of storage. The findings from the feasibility study that was completed earlier by the Bureau of Reclamation indicated that 10% of that new storage water could be used for federal benefits, and that the remaining 90% would be available to the non-federal partner, who of course in this case is the Water Board. So the Water Board filed a water right application for the water anticipated from this project and intends to retain ownership of the water right, or at least the portion or the amount associated with that non-federal portion. And that equates to an estimated 26,100 acre feet of new storage space. So the purpose of today's meeting is to kick off the discussion with the committee members about how the Water Board may want to make that water available to use, for use. And we expect that this may take more than one meeting. It's a complicated discussion, of course. And so today we want to have those discussions and maybe iterative discussions before the committee brings a recommendation to the full board. We would expect today that committee members may have an interest in getting additional information and may request sending staff back to gather more information. There may also be interest in learning about the level and type of interest from in the water from water users and interested parties. So there may be specific questions, comments, or suggestions that come from those parties and the public. So with that in mind, again, this is our kickoff discussion. We anticipate that there may be follow-up meetings, and we'll take guidance from you on that front. Today, however, Justin Ferguson, who's been supporting this project on behalf of the board, has a presentation for you all to help guide that discussion, and then we'd like to open it up for further discussion from the committee members and board members, and to get any guidance that you're willing to give us as to the next steps. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Justin Ferguson.
Let's see, I will share my screen and start that presentation up. All right. Well, good afternoon. It's good to see you all. Like Cynthia said, it's just kind of our kickoff meeting to get started talking about proposed allocation methods, pricing framework, and public outreach for the Anderson Ranch Dam project. I was going to walk everybody through a quick history, a quick timeline about where the project's at, and then we can jump right into the storage allocation models for your consideration. And then at the end, we've got a slide on public engagement and next steps that we wanted to talk you through. So a brief background, the Anderson Ranch Dam Raise project is a collaborative effort between the Idaho Water Resource Board and the Bureau of Reclamation. The project will add an additional 6 feet of elevation to the existing reservoir, capturing approximately 29,000 acre feet of new storage. 26,100 acre feet of that new storage, like Cynthia said, has been determined to be available for non-federal uses and will be held by the board. The additional storage will provide water users the flexibility to manage water shortages and drier years, things like that. A couple of key things that I wanted to walk you through. To date, we've done a feasibility study for the planning constraints and principles for the Anderson Ranch Dam study area. We did an initial environmental impact statement with a draft to be published in Q3 of 25. And then we've also submitted on behalf of the board water right application number 63-34753. It was filed for the full 29,000 acre feet in order to secure the priority date for the board. So right now, this is our current working project schedule. We're at the develop new storage pricing allocation framework. In tandem, we're also going to start working on the water right permit processing so that we line up with the issuance of the final environmental impact statement, and we can time that with the water right permit. We'll also, just right after that, sign and complete a record of decision, moving into contracting and construction, starting in 27-ish, going into 31. These are the current 60% project costs, and this also includes costs from the feasibility study and the environmental compliance portion of the project. These will change as we get closer to the 90% to the final 100% design. But the total that we're looking at right now to the board is 112, about 112 million, 112.5 million. Included with that will be mitigation costs that we haven't yet determined. Those we're going to work out as we get closer to the 90% design. This really is just to make you aware of where we're at. And then one more thing before we jump into the allocation models is the estimated availability of water. So right now, the estimate we have is somewhere between 45 and 48% of years. This will only fill after the senior water rights are filled in line with priority administration. But the final percents will be published in the environmental impact statements provided by Reclamation. We're looking at Q3 of 25 currently. And I can pause there before we jump into the allocations plan. If there were any questions or if I was going too fast, I can go back.
Chairman, I do have a question for Justin, or maybe it's for Chris. How are we doing on the timeline?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Barker, could you repeat the question, please?
The question is, how are we doing on our timeline?
Push that.
Yes.
All right, got it. The project, similar to what Brian reported, I think that was 2 Fridays ago, is moving along, working through the 90% designs. Completed that for the rim project, still working on those for the dam raise part of it. And we anticipate the overall 90% by this summer. And that it will line up with the supplemental draft EIS publication that Justin mentioned. So that was the summer of 25. And then still working towards very in step with what Justin mentioned, the 2027 construction start window in that 2027 year. All right, is that good?
Just wanted the confirmation.
Okay.
From our partners, we were still moving forward.
Yes, we are still moving things along. So the team is still working diligently towards all of the milestones. So, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff, just to follow up on that. I think we slipped a little more because it wasn't that long ago we were talking about starting construction in the fall of 25, and then it slipped to starting construction in 26. But now Jennifer Carrington reported at the Water Users Convention, construction would start in 27. So just clarify those dates for me, if you would, please.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Raybould, yes. So what Jennifer did report at the Water Users Association conference is the most up to date. And yes, they have slipped from several or various updates to the board over the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 months, or, I can't remember how many times. We've had to bump those out based on a whole bunch of different factors. And so we keep Cynthia, Justin informed of that. And the most recent one that Brian and Jennifer reported, so both the one to the bi-monthly board meeting and then the one at the Water User Association conference, those are the most up to date, Mr. Raybould. So
All right, I just
start construction in, I'll say early to mid 2027. If not sooner, if it is possible, but that is the window that we're really trying to target.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other committee members have questions for Chris while we've got him up there? Chris, I've got one. So you've mentioned you estimate the fill percentage will be 45 to 48%, but that will still be updated. You expect to have that answer soon, though, and you don't expect it to change much from that.
Yeah. The folks that are working on that analysis
they have completed their section of the supplemental draft EIS, but the final fully fully reviewed document would be a part of the summer 2025 supplemental draft EIS. So I want to say, shooting off from the cuff here a little bit, that no, we don't anticipate that changing, but I don't want to back ourselves into a corner. So the final number will come out in summer of 25 with our supplemental draft EIS.
Brian, this is Jeff, just to follow up on that. So
Go
are
ahead,
we
Jeff.
saying that between 45 and 48% of the years the space will fill? Are there other years there will be an accrual to the space, but it won't fill? I mean, I guess another way to look at it, what would the average yield in acre feet be on this space?
Mr. Raybould, I do not have that answer, but I can take that question. I don't have an answer for that.
But based on the rest of our agenda, I
Good
think it would be important to look at it maybe from that perspective rather than just an estimate that it's going to fill in slightly less than half the years.
Understood.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet. Thank you.
If there's no further questions, then I guess we'll go back to your slides, Justin.
All right, so jumping back in, these are the proposed allocation plans for your consideration. We've divided that new storage into 3 different buckets. We're going to walk through a couple of these. The first one would be a permanent sale of the storage space. This wouldn't be a sale of the water right. It would just be for space, multi-year contracts, and then any water the board would like to retain for future projects. So the first bucket, like I said, we're looking at 2 different methods. We've got a direct sale and an auction sale. For the multi-year contracts, we're looking at a couple of different options, and I'll cover those right after the permanent sale. And then again, anything that the board would like to hold beyond what you'd like to obligate for these. Before we get to the permanent sales, we've proposed some conditions that we wanted to run past you. So the first is really just a statement to make sure it gets out there that the board will retain ownership of the remaining 90% of the new storage volume, and that the permanent sale would only be a storage contract for the use of the new space. The second condition is that the proposed place of use must be within the water right application boundaries. And then the third is that the purchaser must be able to deliver the water to the proposed place of use. And the purpose there is really just to prevent purchase speculation, people buying it and not being able to use it. All right. So jumping in the first model, direct sale of storage space to interested parties. This contract could look like the board going out contracting directly with interested parties at a project. We could start this at a project cost per acre foot. Right now, that's about $4,500 per acre foot of new storage created. And this would be you all contracting directly with, we've got survey respondents and interested parties to sell the water. The next model we looked at is an auction sale. So under this method, we could start with a minimum bid where we use the project cost per acre foot at $4,500. And then you all could put, you could either do an acre foot auction or a per acre foot, or we could do blocks of 1,000 acre foot. However, you'd rather get those auctioned off. And then the third model is just a combination of the 2. So under this, we would be able to contract with interested parties and fill their needs. And then anything you all had left, we could take to auction, similar to the second model where we set the minimum bid at the project cost per acre foot and sell the rest that you'd like to sell off that way. And I can pause there because that's kind of a lot, and I want to see if you have any questions.
And we do want to remind those in the audience that, this is just our first meeting on this. None of you have seen this before. None of us have really seen this before. So there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more meetings and public input as we move along. We're just trying to get a get the ball rolling on this so that those who are interested have a method to contact staff and then we'll be having more meetings where we discuss all this more thoroughly. But go ahead, Justin.
So then moving to multi-year contracts.
Before we go into the allocation plans, Mr. Chairman, I do have I think we need to get some guidance from Attorney General's office on what kind of methods we're allowed to use, since this is a public entity disposing of some kind of interest, whether it's a storage space sale or rental. What do we have to do to meet the public contracting requirements? We're going to need to know that. And the other thing we are going to need to know is, to what extent are there strings attached to the funding that we've got from federal government through the ARPA program, in terms of what can we do with the what methods are we allowed to use, or if we use a particular method, does that have certain consequences in terms of repayment of money to the United States? We just need to get some guidance, at least from the AG's office, on those public procedures that we are going to need to follow.
And Al, I do see Megan Carter is on the screen. Is your hand up, Megan? Would you like to answer Al's question a little bit?
Well, I don't know
Yes.
if we're ready for her, but if she's ready, I'm fine to listen. But
I have some answers for you. One thing to be aware of, as long as the process is public and makes sense, in terms of, financial responsibility and things like that, we can go through either the auction or the sale process. It just needs to be very clear how that process is determined and why. In addition, the restrictions related to ARPA funds are not terribly onerous. Income from the project, it must be used for the original purpose of the award. However, after the period of performance, which would be December 31st, 2026, there are no further requirements related to that income. So given that the board likely won't be generating any income related to this until after that, there aren't any restrictions on that. One other thing I did look at and flag, and I am still running down kind of the details of that with staff, is that there are some restrictions on sale of real property. And given that water rights are considered real property in Idaho and the Pioneer decision, I just need to go through and fully analyze and have some discussions with our federal partners as to whether or not permanent sale of the space under contract would count as sale of real property.
Chairman, one follow-up, if you don't.
Yeah.
So Megan, I think on the first option, just a direct sale to interested parties, in terms of the public contracting, I guess we need to know, can the board sit down and negotiate with pick out one person and say, we're going to negotiate with you for this amount? Or do we have to have some kind of ability for people to come in and I don't know what the right way to say this is, make a pitch to the board about what they're willing to do, even if we don't go through an auction? In other words, can we sign a contract with somebody when somebody else might be interested in signing a contract with us that might be willing to pay more? And can we do that?
So unfortunately, the law in this particular area related to Idaho has kind of no direct correlation to this particular project, any property that the state itself disposes of either is offered within the state and public entities, or it can be auctioned off, or, if it's not real property, sold. So there could possibly be a way for the board to go through and select, this is the reason we want to contract with X person. And as long as that is clear and those criteria make sense, I think that's possible. But that question has not been fully vetted. Those are my initial thoughts at this point.
Sure. And Mr. Chairman, I just say we do need to get some real certainty in this, because there's not a lot of water here, and there's more interest in that amount of water than there is water. So we need to make sure we do it right.
Absolutely. And I will, I have been looking at it and can provide a more detailed analysis at a later date.
Yeah, it's too soon yet, Megan, and obviously the water's not going to be available before 2031 anyway. So we don't have to make a decision today.
Yeah.
Why we've got Megan on the line here, are there other questions from committee members for her? If not, we'll go back to you then, Justin.
Okay. So moving on from the permanent sales, this would be multi-year contracts. And these we're looking into, but the model that we've got for you today is to allocate a specific volume of new storage on a 10 to 20 year timeline. So this would allow the board to retain ownership of the space while making it still available for the public. And this could be a good option for entities that aren't able, for whatever reason, to permanently purchase a storage contract that we had talked about earlier. We've looked at allocating reduced volumes based on rental pool demand. And I'd be like present that to you in March, if you'd like, as part of an update to this. But two of the options we were looking at were a straight cost contract, much like a space holder, or an options rate based on the amount of water delivered, similar to a Bureau of Reclamation's water service contract. And so those are just there for your consideration, something to think about, and we can get direction on. And that kind of takes us to the end of the allocation plan. I've got a couple of key decision points, and I'm not looking for decisions from you all today other than just direction on how you'd like staff to proceed. So we would look for direction on how many acre feet the board would like to retain and how many acre feet you'd like to permanently sell. And then if there is a permanent sale method that you'd like us to get more information on for the next committee meeting. And then the last two would be how many acre feet would you like to allocate for a multi-year contract? And then if there was a particular contract method that you'd like us to explore, we'd be more than happy. And I can pause there. This is the end of the allocations plan, if there are any questions.
Chairman, I do have a question for Justin. If we were looking at these multi-year contracts, it would be, I think, would behoove us to get some examples of some current reclamation, space holder, and water service contracts, who give us at least a starting point. We don't have to follow everything the reclamation does, but they've done this before, so it would be useful to see what kind of terms and conditions they use.
Absolutely.
Other questions from committee members for Justin on these proposed allocation plans? I would have one thing I'd like to see some research done on, referring back to the Bell Rapids contract with the Bureau. That had I believe, did that have an escalating rate in it, or, on a longer term contract, or it was a single price but I'd like to see maybe if we assume the price of water is likely to go up over time, should we have a slide built into it somehow? other things that you would like to see, staff bring us back more information on? Committee members?
I will, Mr. Chairman, I'll just ask Justin, in light of what we've said today, do you have anything you want, any more guidance you want from us for now, or?
I would look to see if really a good place maybe to start would be, is there a proposed permanent sales method that you'd like us to start looking into? Is there one that you felt comfortable with, or that you just would like more information on? I'm more than happy to look through both and have that ready for March. But if there was a direction you're leaning towards, I can track that down.
Mr. Chairman, this is Mark.
Go ahead, Mark.
The Bureau's 10%, is that the first 10%, or is that 10% of what we yield every year? How does that work?
It's the last 10%.
I like that the best, by the way.
I think it's a pro rata.
Thank you.
I'll
Mr.
just-
Chair, yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff, please.
Oh, I was just going to say, Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff. With regard to the sales method, I think we need some more time to digest that. I mean, I do, before I can actually give you a for certain answer how I would want to proceed, if in fact we do decide to have some permanent sales. And so I had some time on that. The other thing, the prices that you showed us earlier in your presentation, I don't think those prices included the additional cost of whatever mitigation has to occur during construction. So I think we need to look at that as well.
I also see Joanne Cole-Hansen has her hand up.
Yes, I guess. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it might be best to hold off on the permanent sales plan until we get the 90% cost estimate in the middle of summer 2025, so we know what an estimated value might be, a better estimated value might be.
Other questions or assignments for Justin or Cynthia from board members?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Pat.
I'm a little late to the party and I'm somewhat confused here. Am I correct in assuming that any of the water purchased has to be associated with an existing water right that's pertinent to the discussion?
That is correct. So we applied on behalf of the board for water rights. I've got the number back here. It's still an application being processed, but the water right number is 63-34753. All of this new storage would be covered under that water rights to be held by you all, and then storage contracts let rather than a split of the water right. But in order to bid on the water and acquire it, you would have to have an existing water right to go with it? Or does that the 34753 take care of that? I believe that should take care of that. Thank you. Back here to the end real quick. All right.
I don't see any other committee members with a question. Do you have another slide, Justin, or you?
I do. I just had this last one. And it's talking about next steps. So staff would propose a storage committee in early March to kind of review some of the findings, work through some of the comments we've received. If the committee was ready, then we could provide, you could provide a recommendation to the full board in March. It sounds like we may hold that until the 90% design. But really just to see, is there any other information that you all would need before we looked at an allocation framework? And then the next part of that is that if the public had comments or questions or would like to provide feedback, we do have, we've got a new email address, sandersonranch@idwr.idaho.gov. they'll come straight to me and we can get that taken care of and start putting those together for the next committee meeting.
I'm sure there probably are some questions from the folks, interested parties who are in the audience. This is a good time to take a few of those. If any of you do have a question that you'd like, and we know this is premature for you guys too, but or a statement, yeah, or a recommendation. But if you do, come to the microphone and state your name, and we'll give you 3 or 4 minutes to tell us what you think. Looks like everybody totally understands what we're doing here then.
All right.
Just waiting with bated breath.
I think one other assignment for you, Chris, then we know approximately, or we will know how many of the years the storage allocation is going to fill, but I think Al's question was, can you figure out, how many years it will fill to half of that new space, or if it's kind of an all or nothing thing. Be nice for us to know if, 48% of the time we're going to have that full, but another 10% of the time we're going to have some storage in it. Or maybe it's 0. Maybe it's kind of either a flood year or a dry year and it just doesn't get there. So.
Understood. I think we'll have further opportunities for public input, at future storage committee.
Yes, Brian, just remind me, there will be a couple more opportunities at least for public input, and you of course are always welcome to, get an email contact or phone contact with staff to if you need an individual meeting to answer questions that you might have.
Other than that, Mr. Chairman, that's the end of my presentation.
So I guess we're down to, are there any other items that need to come before the storage committee today? Any committee members, other items?
Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, before adjourn.
Second.
You jumped the gun on me, Brian.
No worries, Mr. Barker. Just before we adjourn, when we adjourn the storage committee meeting, we will take 5 minutes and then convene the finance committee meeting. And for those joining by Zoom, it is a different Zoom link that was sent out to you in your emails.
Okay, this is Jeff. I seconded Mr. Barker's motion, Mr. Chairman.
It's moved and seconded that we adjourn this storage committee meeting. Any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign.